For thousands of years, it has been a whisper carried on the desert wind. A legend of two lovers, a queen and a general, united in death as they were in life. The final resting place of Cleopatra VII and her beloved Mark Antony has remained one of history's most profound and most elusive secrets. A mystery sealed by time, sand, and the fall of an empire. Until perhaps, now. Deep beneath the earth, a passage has been revealed. A tunnel carved from bedrock with astonishing precision, now being hailed as an engineering miracle of the ancient world. But this discovery is not the end of the story. It is merely the beginning of the final chapter. To understand its significance, we must look to the woman who willed it into the light. The search for Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was reignited in the 21st century, driven not by a seasoned Egyptologist, but by a Dominican lawyer with an unshakable conviction. Kathleen Martinez, a self-taught archaeologist, was captivated by the Queen's intelligence and political fire, refusing to accept that such a formidable ruler would have no grand tomb to mark her legacy. While mainstream archaeology focused on the sunken ruins of Alexandria, Martinez turned her gaze elsewhere. She pored over the ancient texts of Plutarch and Cassius Dio, finding clues others had dismissed. They spoke of Cleopatra's deep devotion to the goddess Isis, and Martinez formed a radical theory. The queen was not buried in her capital, but in a temple dedicated to her patron deity. Her chosen site was Taposiris Magna, a crumbling temple complex on the edge of the Libyan desert. In 2005, after years of persistence, she finally received permission to dig. The work was grueling. The structures were unstable, the layers of history a complex puzzle under a punishing sun. For years, the team unearthed tantalizing hints. More than 200 coins bearing Cleopatra's face, alabaster heads, statues of the goddess Isis. Each artifact was a breadcrumb, a faint echo from the past, suggesting they were on the right path. But something else was at play at Taposiris Magna. A strange serendipity seemed to hang in the air. Key discoveries were often preceded by unusual events, sudden, violent sandstorms that would strip away layers of earth, or unexpected rains that would reveal the contours of hidden structures. Some on the team even spoke of vivid dreams, of ancient rituals and processions, interpreting them as a form of spiritual guidance from the queen herself. We search for these figures in the dust, seeking to touch the tangible remnants of their lives. We dig for stone and gold, but what we are truly excavating is our own connection to a story that has never really ended. It is the human need to solve the final mystery, to give a queen back her throne, even if that throne is now just a silent chamber hidden deep within the earth. Beneath the sun-scorched earth of Taposiris Magna, a secret lay dormant for millennia. Archaeologists, tracing the faint outlines of a forgotten temple, stumbled upon something extraordinary. A gaping maw carved into the bedrock. It was a tunnel, vast and unfinished, its walls bearing the precise, confident marks of master craftsmen. This was not a simple passage. It was the beginning of a grand design, a subterranean artery leading to a series of silent, waiting chambers. The sheer scale and ambition of the work suggested it was destined for a figure of almost unimaginable significance. The question hung in the dry Egyptian air: who could command such a monument? Deeper inside, beyond the unfinished corridor, the team breached a hidden room. And there, the dust of ages settled upon a breathtaking sight. A collection of golden artifacts, untouched by time, gleamed in the torchlight. But it was the inscriptions that made their hearts pound. They spoke of a queen of kings, a title of immense power, a title inextricably linked with one name, Cleopatra. The evidence was tantalizing, suggesting this complex was, perhaps, the final resting place of Egypt's last pharaoh. The announcement, when it came, cascaded across the globe. The potential discovery of Cleopatra's tomb ignited a firestorm of media attention and captured the public imagination. Press conferences were convened in a flurry of excitement. Television crews descended upon the site, and the story of the search became a documentary in its own right. Behind the scenes, the painstaking work began. Each artifact, every statue, every piece of intricate jewelry, every coin bearing her famous profile was meticulously catalogued, its story preserved for eternity. Soon, these relics of a lost queen embarked on a new journey, exhibited in museums from London to Tokyo, drawing millions of visitors who stood in silent awe, eager for a tangible connection to her legendary era. In the wake of the discovery, Taposiris Magna was transformed. It became a focal point, a new epicenter for archaeological research into a dynasty that had redefined the ancient world. Scholars and historians from across the disciplines began a grand collaboration, their combined expertise unearthing additional structures and artifacts that offered profound new insights into the Ptolemaic period. The find also forced a radical reevaluation of other potential burial sites across Egypt. It was as if a key had been turned, prompting fresh excavations from the delta to the southern frontier, each new dig yielding fresh historical data, rewriting chapters of history we thought were closed. The site itself bloomed into a premier tourist destination. The influx of visitors brought a vital surge to the local economy. But more than that, it fostered a deeper, more personal appreciation for Egypt's staggering cultural heritage. The knowledge gleaned from the tomb was not locked away in academic journals. It was shared through educational programs and public lectures, inspiring a new generation to pick up the trowel and the history book. But the tomb is more than stone and gold. It is a gateway to the woman herself. One of the most remarkable truths illuminated by the context of this discovery is Cleopatra's formidable intellect, most notably her linguistic prowess. She was fluent in a multitude of languages: Egyptian, the tongue of her people; Greek, the language of her ancestors and of scholarship; and Latin, the language of the empire that would eventually consume her. This multilingualism wasn't a mere parlor trick. It was a powerful diplomatic weapon. It allowed her to communicate directly, without the filter of a translator, to connect with cultures and command the respect of political leaders on their own terms. It was a key to her political survival. Her entire reign was a masterclass in this kind of fusion, a remarkable blend of ancient Egyptian tradition and vibrant Hellenistic culture. She understood the power of symbolism. She embraced Egyptian customs and religious practices with genuine reverence, famously presenting herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis, a divine mother to her people. Yet she never abandoned her roots, maintaining profound connections to her Greek-Macedonian heritage. This cultural syncretism was her political signature, a delicate and brilliant balancing act reflected in the art, the architecture, and the very soul of her kingdom. It is this complex, intelligent, and powerful ruler that the tomb begins to reveal. Not just a queen, but a force of history whose final secrets we are only now beginning to uncover. The wind whispers across the sands west of Alexandria, carrying with it a name that has defied the erosion of 2,000 years: Cleopatra. For centuries, her final resting place has remained one of history's most sought-after secrets, a ghost lost to the shifting dunes. But here, at a place called Taposiris Magna, the whispers are becoming a roar. Here, a tomb complex emerges from the earth, a silent stone testament to an architectural vision of breathtaking ambition. Its design is a puzzle box of the highest order. Intricate carvings tell stories to walls that have kept their silence for millennia. Sophisticated tunnels, engineered with a precision that still astonishes, snake deep into the bedrock. This is not merely a grave, it is a statement. The complex engineering speaks of a mind at the peak of its power, a reflection of the grandeur and intellectual sophistication that Cleopatra almost certainly envisioned for her eternal abode. The very blueprint of this necropolis, etched in stone and shadow, seems to echo the mind of the woman who commanded fleets and charmed emperors. And within its depths, the story continues. The artifacts unearthed are not just objects, they are a language rich with symbolism. Statues, their stone eyes staring into ire, reflects not only her royal status, but her profound religious beliefs and her unyielding political ambitions. Each necklace, each bracelet, is a chapter in her life, a glimpse into a reign that sought to fuse the power of Egypt with the might of Rome. Through these inscriptions and symbols, we can begin to understand how Cleopatra viewed herself, and, more importantly, how she demanded to be perceived by the generate. Perhaps most compelling are the secrets the tomb is still revealing. The discovery of hidden chambers, of passages sealed and forgotten, suggests a profound obsession with security. It points to a queen who took extraordinary measures to ensure the sanctity of her final rest. This wasn't just about reverence for the afterlife, a cornerstone of Egyptian belief. This was a calculated strategy. These hidden features reveal a deep, almost paranoid desire to protect a legacy. They add an inescapable element of mystery, hinting at the great lengths to which Cleopatra went to guard her body, her treasures, and perhaps secrets we have yet to comprehend. Beneath the sun-scorched earth, the complex unfolds not as a single chamber, but as a sprawling, subterranean city dedicated to the dead. A series of interconnected rooms and tunnels leads, finally, to the heart of the mystery, the main burial chamber. It is a space clearly intended for a ruler of immense importance. Adorned with elaborate carvings, and once, undoubtedly, shimmering with golden artifacts, its very scale supports the theory that this was the intended destination for the last Pharaoh of Egypt. Among the finds, statues depicting Cleopatra as the goddess Isis stand alongside representations of the ancient Egyptian pantheon. A wealth of golden finery, necklaces, rings, and bracelets is inscribed with hieroglyphs of royalty and divinity. And then there are the coins. Small metal discs bearing her unmistakable profile, a form of propaganda so potent it has survived 20 centuries. These items do more than just confirm a queen's status. They provide a tangible, almost electric connection to the historical figure herself, enriching our understanding of her life, her power, and her end. And yet, it is her end that remains the most persistent shadow. The story of the asp, of a noble suicide to escape the humiliation of being paraded in a Roman triumph, is a powerful one. But the exact circumstances of her passing have always been shrouded in doubt and speculation. As archaeologists brush the dust from these artifacts and trace the lines of these hidden tunnels, they are searching for more than gold. They are searching for an answer. The final chapter in a life lived with such ferocious intensity must surely be written somewhere in the stones of her final home. The search for Cleopatra's tomb is, in the end, a search for ourselves, for our need to connect with a past that feels larger than life, and to touch the hand of a queen who, even in death, refuses to be forgotten. The sands of Egypt hold their secrets close. Beneath the heat-shimmering horizon, a civilization that measured time in millennia left behind a language of stone and gold, of pyramids that pierce the sky, and whispers that still echo in the tombs of forgotten kings. We are drawn to its grandeur, to the silent, enigmatic gaze of the Sphinx. But some mysteries are buried deeper than any pharaoh's treasure. One name, above all, continues to conjure a storm of legend and inquiry: Cleopatra. The final act of her life is the story we are told, a scene of tragic defiance painted in the mind's eye for 2,000 years. A queen, defeated. A room in Alexandria, heavy with the scent of incense and despair. And a serpent, an asp, delivered in a basket of figs to grant a death befitting royalty. This is the account that has echoed through the ages. Yet, for the modern historian, this narrative feels almost too perfect, too theatrical. Some scholars now propose a far less poetic end, a meticulously prepared poison, a swift and certain draft that left no room for. But to see her only through the lens of her death or her famous lovers is to miss the sheer scale of her ambition. Her alliances with Julius Caesar and, later, with Mark Antony were not merely matters of the heart. They were audacious geopolitical maneuvers. Some historians now believe we have profoundly underestimated her vision. It was not simply about preserving an ancient Egyptian dynasty. It was about forging a new one. A unified Greco-Roman world, a superpower to dwarf all others, with its radiant heart not in Rome, but in her Alexandria, the global center of learning, culture, and power. She envisioned a new world order, and at its center, she saw herself. And so, the search for her final resting place becomes an obsession, an archaeological quest haunted by the long shadow of another pharaoh's curse. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb unleashed a torrent of stories, of strange misfortunes befalling those who dared disturb the boy king's slumber. Now, as teams probe the earth for Cleopatra's tomb, that same whisper returns. A belief, unsupported by evidence yet potent in its mystique, that to open her sarcophagus is to invite supernatural retribution. It adds a chilling layer of intrigue to every shovel of sand, every scan of the subsurface. Yet the whispers were not all of curses. Something else was at play during the excavations, a strange and inexplicable synchronicity. Researchers, poring over their logs, noted an uncanny pattern. Major breakthroughs, the unearthing of a crucial artifact, the confirmation of a long-theorized location, seemed to coincide with significant celestial events. A solar eclipse would darken the sky, and hours later, a hidden chamber would be found. A rare conjunction of planets would align, and a cryptic inscription would suddenly yield its meaning. Coincidence, perhaps, but for those on the ground, it felt as though the cosmos itself was conspiring to reveal her secrets, as if some ancient knowledge, encoded in the very stars, was guiding their hands. This feeling was amplified by something far more personal. Several key members of the excavation team, hardened scientists and rational academics, reported experiencing moments of profound, inexplicable intuition. A sudden, unshakable hunch to dig in a location previously dismissed, an intuitive leap in translating a difficult passage that proved correct. These were not wild guesses, but powerful certainties that arrived unbidden and consistently led to progress. These moments, which defy scientific explanation, lend a profound sense of mystery to the process, as if the queen herself were reaching across the centuries, guiding the worthy toward her legacy. And what a legacy it was! To rule, Cleopatra understood she needed more than armies and political savvy. She needed to be divine. She masterfully wove her identity into that of the most powerful goddess in the pantheon, Isis. She was not merely a queen. She was Isis incarnate, the divine mother, the earthly embodiment of magic and power. This was no mere affectation. It was a calculated strategy to legitimize her rule and forge an unbreakable bond with her people. The artifacts now emerging from the darkness confirm this beyond doubt. Statues and inscriptions that depict her not as a mortal woman, but with the horns and sun disk of the goddess. She was crafting her own immortality long before the asp or the poison. In the end, she remains a figure of breathtaking complexity, a scholar, a politician, a commander, and a deity in the eyes of her subjects. Each discovery only deepens the enigma. Each answer only poses a dozen new questions. She built an empire of the mind as much as one of land, a legacy so powerful that even now, 2 millennia later, we are still excavating its meaning, still mesmerized by the ghost of the last queen of the Nile. In the vast material legacy of ancient Egypt, a civilization defined by the monumental, it is often the smallest objects that pose the most profound questions. Amidst the grandeur of temple architecture and the intricate gold of a pharaoh's mask, some artifacts whisper a more intimate story. Our story unfolds in the 1930s under the relentless Egyptian sun. Here, on the Giza Plateau, in the immense and ancient shadow of the Great Sphinx, the Egyptologist Salim Hassan and his team were meticulously clearing away the sands of millennia. They were excavating the New Kingdom Temple of Amenhotep II, a sanctuary built to honor the great beast of stone and the sacred enclosure that cradled it. They expected to find the usual markers of royal piety, fragments of statues, dedicatory inscriptions. But then, something peculiar began to emerge from the dust. It was a small, flat piece of stone, a stela, yet it bore no cartouche of a king, no image of a familiar god. Instead, carved into its surface was a single, unmistakable form, a human ear. It was not an isolated discovery. As the work continued, one tablet became 2, then a dozen, then dozens more. A perplexing puzzle was unearthed. Here was a silent chorus of stone ears, all turned, it seemed, toward the impassive face of the Sphinx. This was not the art of the state. This felt deeply, profoundly personal. These objects, now known as ear stelae, were votive offerings, physical prayers left by ordinary people. They date predominantly to the New Kingdom, a period when, alongside the grand state religion, a more personal piety was flourishing. Individuals sought a direct connection to the divine, a sense that a god might listen not just to the king, but to them. The work of Salim Hassan, documented in his multi-volume account of the Giza excavations, provided the crucial link. The sheer concentration of these tablets around the Sphinx was undeniable. During this era, the Sphinx was worshipped as a form of the sun god Horemakhet, or Horus in the horizon. But he was also seen as a local deity, a powerful guardian who could hear the pleas of the common man. Each stela was a testament to that belief. The iconography is fascinating in its variety. Some are crudely scratched into limestone, the desperate work of an unskilled hand, while others are exquisitely carved, displaying multiple pairs of ears, a commission from someone of considerable means. They all carry the same essential message. It was a plea, carved in limestone, for an audience with the divine. "Hear my prayer," they seem to say. "Hear my suffering, my hopes, my gratitude." The ear became the ultimate symbol of a compassionate, attentive God, a deity who would bend down from the heavens and listen to the whispered secrets of a human heart. These were not offerings of wealth, but of hope. They were the last resort for the sick, the final appeal of the wronged, the quiet thanksgiving of the fortunate. In these small, strange tablets, we see the universal human impulse to bridge the chasm between our world and the next. They remind us that for all the gold and granite, the essence of faith often lies in the simple, desperate belief that somewhere in the great cosmic silence, someone is listening. Across the sacred landscapes of the New Kingdom, a peculiar form of devotion takes shape in stone. They are the ear stelae, limestone tablets that are not merely memorials, but instruments of hope. Some bear a single, oversized, and profoundly carved ear, an anatomical monolith demanding attention. Others present a startling multiplicity, with dozens of ears arranged in meticulous rows, a silent congregation waiting to receive the pleas of the mortal world. They are a library of listening, etched into the very fabric of the desert. The hands that shaped them were not all the same. One can almost feel the difference in the stone itself, a testament to the spectrum of society that sought solace here. There are the finely detailed and polished examples, their surfaces smooth, their lines confident. The unmistakable work the others, more rudimentary, less refined. The earnest work of an individual of lesser means, perhaps carving their own votive offering with more faith than technical skill. This very variation tells a human story. A story of a belief so pervasive it united the skilled and the simple in a common act of prayer. And often, these silent listeners speak. A dedicatory formula, a key that unlocks their intimate purpose, is frequently etched into their surface. It is a simple, recurring phrase, common on the votive objects of personal testament, a direct link to an individual soul from 3,000 years ago. Consider a finely crafted stela, unearthed from the sacred shadow of the Great Sphinx. It features two perfectly defined ears, flanking a depiction of the god Hor-em-Akhet, Horus in the horizon, in the powerful guise of a hawk. The inscription is disarmingly clear. Made by Hui. Nearby, another was found, a monumental piece, possibly the largest ear stela ever discovered. A single, imposing ear dominates the stone. Beside it, a small figure of a deity is perched on a pedestal. This one was made by May. This is not just any May. Inscriptions on the cliffs near the Khafra pyramid identify this same man as an overseer of works under the great Ramesses II, a high-ranking official charged with a monumental task, quarrying stone from the ancient pyramid complex to build a new sun temple at Heliopolis. Defecate such a personal object underscores the profound reach of this practice. It stretched from the highest echelons of power all the way down to the commoners who carved their hopes with simpler tools. But what was their ultimate purpose? Why this obsessive focus on the anatomy of hearing? The prevailing understanding, championed by pioneer mirror offerings, they were intermediaries. The carved ears were believed to function as supernatural conduits, receptors designed to capture the whispered prayers of the faithful and ensure their petitions arrived, clear and true, in the realm of the divine. It was a technology of faith, a way to amplify a mortal voice in the cosmic silence. This practice does not exist in a vacuum. It aligns perfectly with the ancient Egyptian worldview, where the gods were often distant and physical objects, statues, sacred images, cult artifacts, were necessary focal points for worship, bridges across the chasm between the mortal and the immortal. The ear stelae were perhaps the most personal and poignant of these bridges. They represent a fundamental human yearning, one that transcends the millennia, the simple, desperate need to be heard by a power greater than oneself. In the silent stone, a prayer is given form, and in the carved ear, faith is given a chance to listen. In the silent deserts of Egypt, carved from humble limestone, lie messages not of royal grandeur, but of profound and personal hope. They are the ear stelae, small, unassuming plaques covered in a peculiar iconography, the human ear. The great Egyptologist Sir Flinders Petrie, in his seminal work on the religious life of the ancient Egyptians, first connected this imagery to the fundamental act of prayer. He saw it not as complex symbolism, but as a direct, almost startlingly literal interpretation, a plea to be heard. The ear, carved in stone, was a permanent petition for a divine audience. His contemporary, Salim Hassan, working amidst the dust and discovery of his own excavations, took this idea a step further. He proposed that these stone ears were more than just a symbol. They were functional substitutes for the very ears of the god. They were conduits, effectively creating a direct channel for auditory communication, a hotline to the heavens. A worshipper could whisper their deepest fears and desires into the stone, confident that the message was being relayed directly to the celestial realm. But then, a complication arises from the sand. Some stelae bear not one ear, but a multitude, a dense constellation of them, crowding the stone surface. This proliferation of ears has long been a subject of intense scholarly debate. What could it possibly mean? The German scholar Wilhelm Spiegelberg, writing in the early 20th century, offered a truly breathtaking hypothesis. He proposed a connection to a little-known aspect of the divine, a deity described as possessing 77 ears and 77 eyes, a being of almost incomprehensible sensory perception, a god who saw all and, crucially, heard all. While direct textual evidence for such a specific deity remains tantalizingly elusive, Spiegelberg's theory was not without foundation. Deep within the Ptolemaic temple of Khnum at Esna, an inscription describes the great creator Ram god in precisely these terms, as a being with 77 eyes and 77 ears. This lends powerful credence to the idea that the ancient Egyptians conceived of their gods as having heightened, even multiplied, sensory capabilities. The stela, then, was not just an appeal to be heard, but an appeal to a specific kind of all-hearing divinity. Of course, there are other, perhaps more pragmatic explanations. The cluster of ears could simply represent a multitude of prayers. Each ear might symbolize a separate petition, offered simultaneously by a single, desperate individual, or perhaps by an entire family or community pooling their faith. Another possibility is that the multiple ears served as a kind of spiritual failsafe. Given the inevitable wear and tear on objects placed in open-air sanctuaries, exposed to wind and sand for centuries, this was a practical consideration. It ensured that the message would reach the god, even if some of the stone ears were damaged, defaced, or eroded by the passage of time. The most significant clue in this mystery, however, is not what is on the stele, but where they were found. A remarkable concentration of these ear stele has been discovered in the immediate vicinity of one singular, colossal monument, the Great Sphinx of Giza. During the New Kingdom, this ancient wonder experienced a dramatic revival in religious importance. It was no longer seen merely as a relic of a bygone age. It was reborn, identified with a powerful solar deity known as Horemachet, a name meaning Horus in the horizon, a god of kingship and divine protection. The great pharaohs of the 18th and 19th actively promoted this cult. They poured vast resources into the precinct, undertaking extensive renovations of the Sphinx enclosure, constructing new temples dedicated to Horemachet, and erecting their own royal stele within its sacred shadow. The most famous of these is the Dream Stele, placed between the monument's paws by Thutmose IV. It narrates a divine encounter, a dream in which the Sphinx, as Horemachet, speaks to the young prince, promising him the throne of all Egypt in exchange for one simple act: clearing away the suffocating sands that had buried its body. In this context, the humble ear stele left by common people take on a new, poignant meaning. As pharaohs communed with the god in dreams, ordinary Egyptians sought their own audience, leaving these stone offerings at the feet of the celestial sovereign. They are a testament not to power or glory, but to the universal human need to be seen, to be acknowledged, and above all, to be heard by the forces that shape our world. An echo of a plea carried on the desert wind for millennia. For centuries, the desert had been reclaiming its own, its golden tide encroaching upon the Great Sphinx until only a head remained above the dunes. But with royal patronage, the monument was reborn, elevated from a half-buried relic to a site of national pilgrimage. And here, in the shadow of the god-king's effigy, we find evidence of a far more personal faith. They are known as the ear stelae of New Kingdom Egypt, small stone tablets that offer a unique and profoundly human glimpse into the religious soul of an empire. These were not grand royal decrees. They were tangible prayers, carved with the distinctive iconography of human ears, sometimes dozens of them crowding the stone. Each one represented a direct line, a specific form of votive practice centered on a desperate need for auditory communication with the divine. They were offerings left by ordinary people, a cosmic attention to the pleas of mortals. While the precise rituals are lost to time, their meaning is unmistakable. Their widespread discovery, from the capital to the furthest provincial temples, underscores a universal hope. In an age of silent, colossal gods, these small stones cry out with the most fundamental of human desires, the simple, aching need to be heard.